Chicago Bears fans are coming down hard on Caleb Williams for his performance against the Baltimore Ravens. And while he's definitely not without blame, I think a lot of the problems on offense can be spread around to quite a few people involved.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. On the show today, I want to go deep into Caleb Williams' performance against the Baltimore Ravens and look at what he did well and where he made mistakes in this game. But then I want to look more broadly at, okay, how much of what slowed down the Bears' offense was Caleb Williams? We'll go through like each drive in the game to break down, well, why did things slow down there? Why didn't they score touchdowns on some of those field goal drives? Or why were they kept out of field goal range on some of those other drives? How much of that was Caleb missing a receiver, making a mistake versus other things going wrong around him on offense? I think it paints a more clear picture of what we saw against the Ravens. And then we'll wrap up looking at the injury updates we got from Ben Johnson on Monday that were not encouraging, where the Bears are definitely going to need to do something on the defensive line at the very least, and maybe something a little more still at the cornerback spots. But let's start with Caleb and his game, because it's easy to make the quarterback the scapegoat. I certainly thought on first watch that he missed too many throws, and he definitely missed too many throws. I think that we can all agree upon, right? It's not a question of, did he miss throws that he shouldn't have missed? No, we all know that he missed. I think it's a question of, really, did he miss? Were those misses super consequential? Were those misses the biggest reason for the Bears' offensive failure? Like, how impactful were Caleb Williams' misses? And also, like, how many misses is he allowed to make versus, how many is too many? Because I don't think anybody should be expecting absolute perfection, right? Even Patrick Mahomes. Saw him throw a couple interceptions on Monday Night Football last night. Patrick Mahomes misses receivers. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, when he's healthy, the best quarterbacks in the NFL, miss receivers sometimes. So it's not that Caleb Williams has to be 100% accurate with every ball that leaves his hand, but there's a certain number in there somewhere, right? Is it 5 that he's allowed to miss? Is it 3 that he's allowed to miss? Is it 7 or 10 that he's allowed to miss? Like, there's not an exact number there, right? It's probably more like a percentage, and even then it's kind of like situationally. Like, you can't miss the big ones on third down, but if you miss a first or second down throw here and there, you can survive. And it also depends on how you miss, right? Is that miss an interception, like the throw to Rome Odunze, or does the miss safely fall into the ground short of the receiver like one of the other ones Caleb Williams had? And that's what makes this so gray and not black or white, very subjective and not very objective here. But I do like to look at as objectively as we can here. And you can start to look at, like, from an accuracy standpoint. He had 4 passes in this game that you would categorize as a throwaway, right? Where he's not necessarily aiming to get it at a receiver, or knows that the place he's throwing it is just to get rid of it safely, as opposed to, putting it in harm's way or trying to force a pass that's not going to be there. 2 of those ended up being intentional groundings, which is another set of problems on their own. But even on those plays, right, it's not that he's inaccurate. It's just that he is choosing to throw it away to get rid of those passes. And so you can take those out as far as, like, inaccurate throws from Caleb Williams. They're incompletions, but not necessarily inaccurate throws. Same thing with, like, Rome Odunze's drop on the deep right sideline. Tough catch, but an accurate catchable throw. Like, that's not an inaccurate incompletion from Caleb Williams, nor a bad decision. So you can kind of take, those 5 passes out of his incompletions there, and all of a sudden, that would make you, 25 of 33, and that completion percentage is 75.75% completion percentage. And all of a sudden, a 75% completion percentage, not a bad game. Of course, doesn't have the touchdowns, still has the interception. But the point being, like, I don't know that I go back in this game and think, wow, Caleb was exceptionally inaccurate. I think he was a normal amount of inaccurate. You go through I think there were 3 passes where he threw it a little bit too far in front of receiver, 2 passes where he overthrew a receiver vertically, a couple of passes behind a receiver, and then other ones where the coverage is really tight on there and he's trying to force it in, and it's just a tricky pass to make there. And like that feels like a more normal mixture of plays. And so I'm left coming away from this not as though, I'm not trying to convince you, Caleb actually had a great game, because no, I don't think it was a great game, but it wasn't a horrible game either. I do think it was probably slightly better even than what we had seen the week before against the New Orleans Saints. But I think the offense around him wasn't performing as well as you would like to. And I think that's part of why you see the difference on the scoreboard, right? I still think big picture, Caleb needs to be better than what we saw against the Baltimore Ravens. Like, as he develops, he needs to become a better version of himself than what we saw against the Ravens. But it wasn't as though it was some big step back or some big regression and struggle into like not being, the Bears quarterback of the future, not being a good enough player for the long-term success of this franchise. Like, I think there's been some overreaction to this because it's been, multiple games of him not playing super, super great ball. And I think it's valid to have some sort of, concern or be watching with a closer eye at this point, but to be, giving up or calling on a backup quarterback to go in there or anything like that, definitely not where things stand right now for Caleb. And it's just another sort of evaluation game in the tool here, or in the box here, that we just kind of keep watching as things move forward here. Like the interception, definitely very concerning. I mean, not concerning from like a decision-making standpoint, but like, not a fluky, unlucky interception, but just like a bad throw interception. Ben Johnson has said that he should have thrown to Kyle Monangai on the check down on the play. If you look at like how the play is drawn up, like our friends at True Media even do these nice little graphics for us that we pull up and can see the visuals of the routes being run and at what depth. It's a play action pass, I believe, with Kyle Monangai in the backfield, 2 tight ends on the right side, a single receiver to each side of the field for Caleb. No, excuse me, tight end on each side, 2 by 2, basically. Receiver and tight end on the left, receiver, tight end on the right. Madunze runs a crossing route over the middle of the field. It's man coverage. In theory, he should be open on that play, and if you hit him in the right spot, it's a catch. There is a defender in front of Rome, so he's probably going to take a hit if that ball is thrown to the right spot, but still a catchable, open enough receiver. But he does have Kyle Monangai working underneath in the flat there, who had a little bit of space. The tight end on the right side is Colston Loveland, I believe, and he runs a little curl route, and then when Monangai runs underneath that and then breaks to the outside, he's got a lot of space, especially with the outside receiver to that side, which I think was Duvernay's, going deep, so there's a clear out. So there's plenty of room to throw it short to Monangai and see if he can get you a first down after the catch. Ben Johnson says that's the case. I'm going to take Ben Johnson's word at it. I still think generally not a horrible decision from Caleb, just not an accurate pass. And the problem continues to be more of like a footwork mechanics thing. His feet aren't lined up with his shoulders and where he's aiming the ball there. He's not stepping fully into the throw. He's just a little too flat-footed, and that's where some of the problems are caused there. There's another play, the pass at the very end to DJ Moore in the end zone that he misses is wide open. That one was a pretty clear miscommunication, where DJ Moore stops his route and turns and faces the quarterback, to kind of sit behind his own. Caleb thought he was going to keep moving horizontally across the back of the end zone, so he throws it to where he thought DJ Moore was going to keep going. DJ Moore stops running, and so it's still just quarterback and wide receiver not on the same page. That also has to get better. And I'm certainly running low on patience for those things, but it's still like Caleb Williams' first year in this offense. He wasn't getting a lot of help last year. Like, I'm willing to still have some patience for this to take time and grow, especially when the rest of the offense around him wasn't on its sharpest against the Ravens. So we'll go through, yes, Caleb was definitely a real factor in the Bears' offensive struggles, but not the only factor and not the thing that derailed all their drives from getting more points. So we'll take a look at what actually was going wrong most consistently in this game next on Locked On Bears.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
So, yes, Caleb's missed throws were a real factor in the Bears' lack of offensive success against the Baltimore Ravens. But I don't think when you go back and watch the game, that's not what derailed them from having offensive success. And I think if I had to I think it falls into a number of different categories. Right? I don't think there was necessarily one simple thing that if you just fixed that, everything would be fine. But I do think of the factors that contributed, the single greatest one to me felt like the offensive line, and maybe by extension then Ben Johnson for not doing more to put Caleb and the offense in a better position to overcome the offensive line. But when I go back through, one of my big curiosities for this game was okay, you only scored 16 points, settled for field goals a bunch of times, you got a touchdown at the end, but other than that, you weren't finishing these drives with points. So what was happening to really derail this offense? Because over the course of the game, I think it was only one 3 and out. I have my list in front of me here. I've got, I think 2 3 and outs, one in each half. Otherwise, you had drives that at least sustained a little bit. You were getting first downs. You were getting some ball movement, but then you'd either get in the red zone and stall out or, get across midfield and stall out. And I was was that just all Caleb Williams missing guys on third down and that's the real problem? And I didn't find that to be the case. Certainly, if Caleb Williams is more accurate on some of those throws that he did miss, obviously, you're getting more yards, you're getting farther downfield, and maybe a couple of those drives that end in punts don't end in field goals instead, or maybe even end in touchdowns. But when I specifically look at things that went wrong, let's walk through it drive by drive here real quick. First drive of the game, they drive downfield pretty effectively. They get into the red zone, they hand it off a couple times, don't really get anywhere, and then on third down, Theo Benedict gets beat off the left side by Mike Green with an easy sack on Caleb Williams. It's sack in the red zone, all right, field goal. Not necessarily Caleb's fault. He drove him down there. Then running game struggled and pass protection broke down. It's kind of on offensive line. It's kind of on Ben Johnson there. Second drive of the game also ends in a field goal. And that's where, again, they get down close to the red zone. And I think that there was a second down play where Caleb is rolling out and under pressure and has to turn and flip and just kind of floats it to the sideline. Loveland was kind of loosely there, but really he's just throwing it away. And then on third down, he misses Rome Odunze a little bit. There's it's really close coverage, tight coverage on Rome Odunze, but he puts it just a little bit too far out in front as Rome's trying to fight through the contact, breaking over the middle of the field. I'm willing to give that partially to Caleb Williams there. I wonder if there's a slight the contact disrupts the timing there type of thing, where maybe it's not exactly pass interference, but Caleb's thrown to a spot thinking Rome is going to be there and Rome's not, and it's not purely an inaccuracy thing. And the play before that, there's pressure in his face, he has to throw it away. I'm willing to put some blame on Caleb there, but not all blame, but you still get a field goal. Then third drive, they go 3 and out because of an intentional grounding on pressure on third down. They couldn't run the ball. Now they had a check down for a short gain, and then the bunch of pressure in his face just throws it to the sideline. Intentional grounding kind of screws them over there. But that feels again, pressure on the quarterback from the offensive line and an inability to run the ball at that point. Then you get to the 2-minute drive. The Bears only had 4 drives in the first half, and you get to the final 2 minutes of the first half, and again, clock management becomes an issue here, where Caleb has an intentional grounding, and I'll say that's partially his fault for sure. He was again trying to He thought Colston Loveland would be breaking to the outside, but again, like game situation type of stuff, it ends up costing you a timeout when you're burning it on that play, and that's really tricky to help you be able to drive down and get points on the board. Then he completes a pass inbounds to Colston Loveland with no timeouts, and then they run the field goal unit on and they kick the field goal and they can't get it. And it's like, sure, maybe you do want a kicker that can hit that kick. I mean, they did have enough time to snap, hold, and get a clean shot at it. So I think it's Caleb's fault that they would have got 3 points instead of 7, but it's not necessarily Caleb's fault that they got 0 points instead of 3, because he did get them a makeable field goal opportunity, though his intentional grounding and then the completion inbounds and not having a player that gets out of bounds, maybe part of that's Ben Johnson too, but like there's some Caleb blame there. Then in the third quarter, he starts the second half, they go 3 and out when they were short run, and then they throw a screen pass to Luther Burden that doesn't go anywhere, and then he completes something underneath to Zacchaeus that's short of the sticks. Zacchaeus can't get a first down, and I again feel like why Zacchaeus is getting 7 targets for 34 yards in this game. Like Caleb's throwing to the open receiver, but needs the receiver there, whether it's Zacchaeus there or Luther Burden on the other one on the screen pass. Like make a play. Playmaker gets the ball, make a play. Like if we're gonna get mad for Caleb, like if we're gonna tell Caleb to check it down and be more of a game manager, that's what he did there. It's not his fault that he completed 2 passes on a 3 and out and didn't get a first down there. Because in the very next drive, you get the running game rolling. Caleb hits a shot play to Roma Dunze for a big gain. Then they do the screen pass to DeAndre Swift for a big gain. They get it in the red zone. They punch it in for a rushing touchdown. Like, boom, touchdown scoring drive that Caleb helped execute, but also helped that the running game got going there. And it doesn't go on his stat sheet as a touchdown, so the box score looks a little bit worse. But he led and orchestrated a touchdown drive that wasn't just running the ball for 100 yards to DeAndre Swift, but some big key quality passes in there. Then you get to the interception drive where they're backed up on their own one. We talked about the interception earlier. Throws the ball to Roma Dunze inaccurately. Should have checked down to Renungai, but probably still wasn't the worst decision in the world, but just the worst throw. Not a horrible decision, but a bad throw. And the interception then sets up Baltimore points and gets you in a lot of trouble at that point of the process there. So that one's all on Caleb. But like with other drives you talked about, like sack, not all on Caleb. Maybe missing a Dunze is on Caleb, but then pressure and intentional grounding on third downs, not all on Caleb. Getting him in field goal range is not all on Caleb. Maybe some on Caleb. Throwing it to Zacchaeus on third down, short of the sticks. So it's not Caleb's fault that they couldn't pick up the touchdown. Then they score a touchdown next drive. Like there's a couple of drives in here that have been Caleb's fault. But for the most part, I'm seeing some offensive line issues derailing some things, some lack of a running game derailing some things, playmakers not making plays enough derailing some things, and then also Caleb Williams. But like if we're splitting this blame pie, no one is over 50% here, but I think the biggest slice probably goes to offensive line because that derails the running game a little bit too, in addition to the passing game derailment. Then I'd maybe go Caleb Williams 2 there, and then, running game playmaker stuff is like 3/4, and Ben Johnson's in there somewhere, but like you're really kind of mixing it all around there. I mean, like we even talked about at the end, like it's a miscommunication with DJ Moore in the end zone, not like some horrible decision or horrible accuracy because he just thought the receiver was going to be somewhere that he didn't. He threw it where he wanted to, where he thought he was supposed to, but just not where the receiver thought he was supposed to. And that doesn't even count, the second to last drive when Roma Dunze drops that deep ball on the right sideline that could have been really big. And then on 3rd and 5, Caleb overthrew Devin Duvernay in the end zone. He's taking a shot when, I get if he is open for a touchdown, so you want to take the shot. But again, Devin Duvernay is the one running that route. Why is that not Roma Dunze, DJ Moore? I guess Luther Burden had been concussed at that point, but still, I just don't love exactly how the players were used, even though Caleb wasn't always hitting them exactly the way he needed to either. So it just feels to me like offensive struggles, a lot of blame to go around. Defensive struggles to me still felt like pass rush number 1 pretty clearly there. And the injury update from Ben Johnson about the defensive lineman they lost was not good. And so Ryan Poles is going to have to do something. And it's got to be more than just activating Austin Booker off of the injured reserve. So we'll take a look at what the future might look like in the short term for this Bears defensive line and what some of their options might be next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Rugiet. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet. Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNFL so they know we sent you. Rugiet. Stop making excuses and start making moves. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. I know you've been enjoying the NFL season, but the NBA is also back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, yes, the offensive issues, I think, were the bigger ones against the Baltimore Ravens, but I'm getting more and more concerned about the defensive issues that are building, and we're already present a little bit against the Ravens, but we're more expected, I think, is the difference there. With the pass rush really falling apart, I don't know if it wasn't strong in the first place, I guess I don't know that it can fall apart, but not nearly enough of a factor against Tyler Huntley, and you worry about it moving forward against, better quarterbacks and better offenses that are coming down the line on the schedule, especially as the situation is not only not getting better, but it seems to be getting worse with the latest injury update from Ben Johnson. The team is going to place Shamar Turner on injured reserve with a torn ACL, your second-round pick on the defensive line, who was injured for all of training camp of the preseason, slow to get started this season, now done for the season. Like back-to-back significant injuries for him that are going to severely limit his development, and I think as a result, like his long-term role in your defensive line. Like it lowers my expectations for his second year, knowing that it's the end of October and you're just starting an ACL recovery. And so if that's, say, again, not a doctor, but 9 months plus, that puts you in July by the time he's still just getting off of the ACL recovery, which means he might be slow to start next training camp, which then he's slow to start next season. Like it's just a disaster for Shamar Turner. And like this combination of injuries, like I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but like this combination of injuries can be the start of derailing maybe his career, like this, not like his entire career, but like his rookie contract career. That like defensive line especially takes so long to adapt to the NFL game, and when you're not out there getting those reps, like it takes guys 2 or 3 seasons before you really see them settle in their own. Look at Javon Dexter; we're in year 3, and he's still not quite all the way there yet, and he hasn't had major injuries to overcome. So like Shamar Turner is basically starting next season as a rookie again. And then it's going to take 1 or 2 years from there. So it might be year 4 of his rookie contract before we ever see if he's actually something that can be a major contributor for this Bears defensive line. Like that is it's hard to overstate how important and devastating of an injury that is for that guy at that position who's already had an injury, already missed so much time. His entire rookie year is essentially a wash. And that's such a huge setback for a second-round pick that you not only in general, you need your second-round picks to be major contributors, but a second-round pick at a huge position of need and a huge weakness on your team is no longer out there to be a part of it. And then you add in Dominic Robinson gets hurt on, I think was the opening kickoff of the game, and it sounds like he's going to miss a little bit of time with, I don't want to say they say a high ankle sprain. Now I'm struggling to remember exactly what the injury was, but like not something that's going to be just, he'll be out a few weeks with an ankle injury. And so presumably, you're not going to have either of those guys. I mean, well, certainly Turner, you're not going to have the rest of the year. Dominic Robinson, it's not enough to go on IR yet, so less than 4 weeks, but you're not going to have him next week against Cincy, maybe not even the week after that, and that leaves you incredibly thin on the defensive line. The Bears are fully expected to, I can almost definitively say, they're going to activate Austin Booker off of injured reserve today as this podcast comes out, but that leaves you at defensive end with Montez Sweat, Dayo Odeyingbo, Austin Booker, and Daniel Hardy. That is not an NFL caliber defensive end rotation. They absolutely have to add something else in addition to those guys at defensive end. When you lose Dominic Robinson and Shamar Turner, there is no excuse. Like, it will be negligent general managing of Ryan Poles if the Bears do not add a defensive end to provide further depth at that position. And honestly, even if that's just the practice squad player, Jamari Croma, that's not enough. That is negligent team building roster management. They have to go out and do something. This is not a good enough pass rush when everyone's fully healthy. And so it sure as hell is not a good enough pass rush when you're missing two of your top rotational players, while your two starters are also not playing great ball, in small part because they don't have anybody consistent to rotate in with them to give them a breather and keep them fresh. I should also throw out there that Luther Burden indeed suffered a concussion, so we don't know what his status is going to be. A concussion can sometimes be he's ready to go next week, and sometimes it can be a couple weeks, or in Jaquan Brisker's case, it can be 10 weeks or however long that ends up being. So that one's definitely going to be a one to keep an eye on, but less worried about the wide receiver position, more worried about 5 missing cornerbacks and now, 3 missing defensive ends really puts you in a tough spot here. I think they have to do something. I'm just not sure, there's not a great solution out there, but there are a couple of different options to keep an eye on. They had veteran Tano Passignon on the defensive line earlier this year. They released him. He's on the street. Actually, the Colts signed him to their practice squad. So if they wanted to add Passignon, they'd have to sign him directly to the active roster and not try and do some kind of practice squad elevation thing. I would assume, given that he knows the system and has been involved in the preseason training camp, that he would be the first choice there, but a couple other names to keep an eye on. I don't have any inside information here, just looking around at some guys that might make sense. I guess, first of all, DeMarcus Walker is still a street free agent. He's not on a practice squad. They cut him in March, obviously, but he's a big body guy. I don't think that's very likely, but just a name to keep an eye on there. But 2 names with some real familiarity here that I think could make some sense. Over on the Cincinnati Bengals practice squad, your upcoming opponent, if you want to poach from their practice squad, former New Orleans Saints second-round pick Isaiah Foskey is sitting on their practice squad. He was a second-round pick by Dennis Allen. Obviously underwhelmed in New Orleans, has been a draft bust for sure, but if you just need a body at defensive end that your defensive coordinator is familiar with and that he's familiar with your defense, it would make a lot of sense to me if they went that direction. And then a former Lions third-round pick, Julian Okwara, another defensive end. He is on the Cleveland Browns practice squad. Obviously hasn't worked with Dennis Allen or some of these defensive coaches, but Ben Johnson has a familiarity with who he is, how he handles himself in the locker room, how he carries himself at practice, how hard he works, what kind of personality he is. And I think that there could be some comfort in that familiarity as an emergency option off of the Browns practice squad. But again, either of those guys, you got to put right on your 53. You can't call them up on a Sunday. You'd have to release someone from your active roster. And so we'll see what they do. I'm worried that Ryan Poles is going to look at this and say, hey, Austin Booker's coming back, and we'll promote Jamari Croma from the practice squad and call that good enough, because it is not good enough. And this position has been under-addressed throughout this whole process. I worry it will continue to be under-addressed. But if the Bears make any big moves on the defensive line, you can be sure we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, you can always check out the Locked On NFL podcast for more football talk. I co-hosted on Tuesday mornings with Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans. We're talking about the Monday Night Football game between the Chiefs and the Commanders, and then the divisional races in the NFC North, the NFC West, the AFC West, and the AFC East. So a lot more football talk there for your second listen. Just make sure you're coming back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.